Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you how to use the M-Builder tool to have your constructions in your own land. Let's imagine you have at least one land in Metaverse and you want to find the place of that land. For doing this, first you should click on the M on your keyboard to access the My Assets tab. My Assets shows all the NFTs and lands you own, and for example here I want to access my U1461 land and I want to have some constructions there and I want to find the place of that. So by clicking on that, a navigation line appears that directs me to place of my land. So let's follow this navigation line. Okay, here we arrived, and if we be on the correct place on the map and move the pointer of our mouse to the place of our land, a text appears that shows us we can design this area, and by clicking on that we will go through the M-Builder to start our constructions. This is the M-Builder workspace. By M-Builder toolkit you can create stunning buildings in your land, and I can say that Metaverse M-Builder toolkit is one of the most powerful tools to create your building among the Metaverse applications. So let's start to have a look on that. The first thing, you can see a green rectangular shape on the ground which shows the area of your land. That means you cannot create anything outside this area as it's not part of your land. For example, you cannot create anything in here. On the left side, you can see the main toolbar, which consists of all the tools you need to create your buildings in your land. And on the right side, by default, when you enter the M-Builder, you can see just the models pack, which consists of all the models collections that you can bring in your land and make your constructions. And by default, for the first release, we just have the Office Starter model collections, but in the future, we will add more. By clicking on the plus button near the Office Starter, you can access to all the models of Office Starter. And as you can see, Office Starter consists of two main categories. One is structures and the other is decorative. And each category consists of some subcategories. For example, structures have floors, walls, ceiling, doors. And if I hold the leftmost button and drag left and right, I can access to other subcategories, for example the ceiling, doors, the stairs, panels, and all these are the subcategories of structures. And if I click on the decorative, I can access to the other subcategories that belongs to decorative: furniture, lamps, art, and stickers. And if you look at down, you can see the list of the models that belongs to the subcategory you have selected. For example, all these models you can see belong to furniture, and furniture belongs to decorative. Okay. Sometimes in this viewer you have more than 9 models, and for seeing all the models you should hold the leftmost button and drag up and down to slide between the models, and you can see other models of this subcategory. And for example, if I clicked on the structure and clicked on the wall and again hold the leftmost button and drag up and down, I can see all the walls from this subcategory. Alright, now I want to show you how to bring an object from the models pack in your land. You can bring that by clicking on the object you want to enter to your land. For example, I want to bring this 2 by 2 meter in my scene. I just clicked on that and I will have this wall in my scene. And I will select, I will go to the floor subcategory, for example, and I want to bring this 2 meter by 2 meter floor in my scene, and I will just click on that and I will have my floor in my scene. And also I can do it for the other ones. For example, I will go to the main decorative category and select from the furniture. I will select this table in here and I will have it there. Let's move that. Okay. All right. Now that you have learned how to bring an object in your scene from the models pack, I want to show you how to select an object and what will happen if you select an object. Let me select this floor by left click on that. By left clicking on that, I will select this floor, and when I select an object, another window appears at the top right of your M-Builder called the materials window, and in the materials window you can edit and change the material of your object. For example, the floor I have selected have a brown material, and if you look at the materials, I have a brown material under that, and this material is for the floor I have selected, and I can change it by clicking on this material, excuse me. And when I clicked on that, I will access to all the materials I can assign to my floor. And in here I have some categories, and under each category I have some materials. I can give it some different colors. I can use lights, I can use bricks, I can use woods. Again, if I hold the leftmost button and drag in the left and right, I can access to the other categories in here. For example, I can give it concrete, glasses, and also marbles. And for this example, I want a wooden floor, so I will select the wood and select one of the wood materials under the woods tab, and here we go, we have a wooden material for my floor. Sometimes when you select an object, that object is created from just one material, like this floor. And sometimes, for example, for this table, when you select that, you will have two materials. One materials is the black materials that is for the legs, and the other one is for the upper part of the table. And you can edit both the material. For example, I want the upper table to be brown, so let's change it to the brown. And I want the legs, for example, to be another color, be a wooden color, for example. So let's click on the black, and again go to the woods and select another wood material for that. Okay, that's it. And again, let me select this wall, and you can see I have two materials for this wall by default. And let me change the direction of my view to show you the other side of my wall. And you can see wall objects in M-Builder by default have two materials, one material for one side of the wall and the other for the other side of the wall. And you can change both sides when you select that object. For example, I want to have a concrete material for this side, so I will select the brown part and I will go to the concrete tab. I will give it a concrete material for that, and I want to, for example, change the color of this side to something like gray, so I will select the white that belongs to this side, and from the colors tab, let's back to the colors tab and select the gray material for that. And that's how you can change and edit the material of your objects. So one important thing when you making your constructions in your lands, never use many different materials for your construction, because you have some limitations for using materials. If you look at this number on the right side of the materials in the material window near this text, you can see for me it's written 5 from 16. That means I have used 5 different materials in my scene from my 16 limitation. That means I can just use 16 different materials for my scene. For the performance purpose, for the performance purpose, and for having a good performance when you're creating your land. And always try not to use the materials that you don't need for your land. For example, I don't want to have different colors for both sides of my wall. And let me count the material I have used. One material I have used for my floor, 1. 2 materials I have used for my wall, 3. 2 materials I have used for my table, 5 different materials. And when you don't need extra materials, try not to use them. For example, I don't want a different material for both sides of my wall, and I want my wall to be concrete, just concrete. Both sides be concrete. So I will select the wall in here, and I will change the gray material to the same concrete I have used for this side. So let's select that, and from the concrete tab I will select the same material for the concrete I have used in here. And as you can see, the number decreases to 4. Now I have 4 different material in my scene. 1, 2, and 2 other for the table. So in total I have 4 materials. And also let me say I don't want my upper part of my table to be brown. I want to have the same material as I have used for my floor. So I will select the table. I will select the material related to the upper part, which is brown, and I will go to the woods, and in here I will select the same material I have used for my floor. And if you look at that, now I have 3 different material in my scene, and I have a good performance for my scene, and it increases the performance of loading my scene, loading my buildings in my land for the others, and it helps a lot. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3 different materials, and that's how this number means, and that's how you can control this number. And keep in mind, the less amount of material you have in your scene, the more performance you have when you are when somebody wants to load your land and somebody want to visit your land. And it helps you a lot when somebody can load your land as easy as can be loaded. Alright, let's have a look on how to navigate on the window in the M-Builder, and also I want to speak about the main toolbar. For navigating, you should know some shortcuts, but I recommend to know, if you want to know all the shortcuts in the M-Builder, just click on the chain in here, and you can see all the shortcuts that you can use in the M-Builder, and the left ones are for navigating through the window. And I always recommend you to use the shortcut because it increases your speed during the modeling, and you can use these shortcuts. So if you click again on the chain, it start to disappears. And I want to say about navigating, if you roll your wheel of your mouse, it start to zoom in and zoom out in the scene. If you hold the wheel and start to drag, it pans on the screen. And if you hold the right mouse click and start to drag, it looks around, left, right, up and down. And while you are holding the right mouse click, if you clicked on the W, you can somehow zoom in. And if you clicked on the S, you can zoom out. And if you clicked on the A while holding the right mouse button again, you can go to the left. And if you clicked on the D, you can go to the right. And also, again, while holding the right mouse click, if you clicked on the Q on the keyboard, it start to go down. And if you clicked on the E on the keyboard, it goes up. And one of the other things that is very important for navigating through the window is orbiting. And you can orbit around an object by holding the Alt and also the right mouse button and start to drag. But keep in mind, sometimes when you want to orbit by using the Alt and right mouse button, a very bad effect happens. And if you had a bad effect during orbiting, just select one object in your scene and use the focus button in here to focus one time in an object. And when you do it one time, the orbit fixes, and you can orbit it very easily by holding the Alt and right mouse button and dragging. And that's how the orbit works and how you can navigate through the windows. And now we want to have a look on the main toolbar. And before talking about that, it's very good to know the name of these buttons. So you can click on the exclamation mark in here to show the name of all the buttons in here, and it helps you a lot when you know the name of them. For example, you know this home icon is for saving and exiting your M-Builder. Let's imagine you have done with your scene and you want to save and exit your work. You can click on save and exit, and by clicking on that you can go out. And all right, okay, now let me back. This is the undo and redo. This is undo and redo. This is the move. This is the rotate, scale, duplicate, multi-select, focus, snap, delete, and full screen. And let me see how they work. Undo and redo works as the other softwares do. For example, if I select an object and move it and see it's not the thing I wanted, so I want to undo that, I will click on the undo. And also if I clicked on the redo, it again goes to the last work I did. And let's back one more time, back again by undoing that. And this is the move. And also undo and redo, the Control Z is for undoing, the Control Y is for redo. Move, which the shortcut of it is W on the keyboard, is for moving your object in a specific axis or also in a screen, in a plane, sorry. So you can move it in an axis, for example in X axis, you can move it in Y axis, but keep in mind you cannot move down the ground, and also you cannot move so that you go out from your limitation of your land. And this is how move works. And this is the move, and this is the rotation. So the shortcut of the move is W. The form of the gizmo of the move is something like this. If you click on the rotation, you can rotate your object in a specific axis. For example, I want to rotate it in Y axis, I can rotate it. I can rotate it in the Z and also in the X axis. And let's undo that. Sometimes you want to rotate your object with the specific numbers. For example, you want to rotate it exactly 90 degree, or you want to rotate it 15 by 15 degree. In this time you should use the snap rotation tool. If you look at some tools, for example rotation, we have a small triangle down this button. If you clicked on this button here, you can access to the other form of that tool. Let me remove the names. For example, you have a free rotation, which is by default activates, and you have a snap rotation in here. And if you click on the snap rotation, and if you select your object, you can rotate with 15 by 15 degrees, and in this time you can rotate it exactly 90 degrees, or you can rotate it 45 degrees, for example. And that's how snap rotation does. And I recommend you to always use this snap rotation for having the precise results. And I use the free rotations less, and most of the time I use the snap rotation instead of free rotation. But if you want to back to the free rotation, you can click on this area again. By clicking on this area and selecting the free rotation, you can rotate freely, and that's how it does. And sometimes you want to scale an object. For scaling, and also I should mention the shortcut of rotation is E on the keyboard. So shortcut of move is W. If you click on the W, you will have access to the move gizmo. Shortcut of the rotation is the E, and the other one is the scale, which shortcut of that is R on the keyboard. If you click on the R, you can access to the scale, and by clicking on this button. If you click on this button, you can activate the scale gizmo in here. And this is the scale gizmo. You can scale and change size of your object at the same time in all axes. If you hover this cube and start to scale, and also you can scale it in a specific axis. For example, I want to scale it in X axis, and if I start to scale, you can see my cube starts to scale in both directions in the X axis. And one thing you should bear in mind, and I always recommend you, if you have some object which have textures, for example this vote, I don't recommend to scale in a specific axis, because it gives a bad effect to your textures. It stretches your textures and it has a very bad effect. So try not to use a scale in a specific axis when you have textures. But if you have colors, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't give you any bad effect by scaling in a specific number. And one more thing you should bear in mind, we have some limitations. We added some limitations for scaling. You cannot scale more than twice the current size of your object. Let me show you an example. If I start to scale this object, when it reaches the twice dimension of that object, it doesn't scale much. And this is the limitation we have added at the moment in the builder. All right. And this is how scale works. And also we have another handy tool for the scale that you can access by clicking on this triangle again, that start to scales the object. If you clicked on that, select your object, click it on this to activate that. If you activate this, you can scale your object in just one side. And I want to compare this one with the default scale tool. For example, I want to scale in x-axis, but in one side, from this side, just this side. I will select this red dot in here and drag and start to scale it just one side, from one side in the x-axis. And let me compare it with the default scale, and let's activate the default scale by clicking on this area and activating the scale. And let me select your object. At the moment the scale is not activated. We should one click again to activate it. And let me scale it in the x-axis. You can see from both directions it starts to scale, but in this kind of a scale, you can scale it just one click again to activate it, just in one side in a specific axis. All right, this is another tool of a scale that I should mention. The other one is duplicate, is for duplicating your object. When you select an object, click on this button, it starts to duplicate your object. Now you have two objects, but these objects are overlapped when you clicked on the duplicate, because it starts to create a copy of that object right on that location of your object you have duplicated. So when you clicked on the duplicate, you should keep in mind to move it to the other place, so that not to be overlapped, because sometimes overlapped objects gives a bad flickering effect in the scene when you save and exit your work, and that's how it does. And all right, this is the duplicate, and let me click again. Also, you can duplicate several objects at the same time. For example, if I hold the control and select, you can select several objects. Now I have two objects selected. Or you can use this button. This is the multi-selection button. If you enable this toggle and clicked, you can select several objects. If you click that, it will start to select, and if you again clicked on that, it deselects that object. And that's how multi-select works, and you can do it by holding the control. While holding the control, if you clicked on the other objects, those objects will be selected and added to your selection. If I again clicked on those selected objects, it will start to deselect that object from your group. And okay, let me select these two objects and click on the duplicate. By clicking on the duplicate, now you should bear in mind to move it and put it in the other place, so that not to have overlapped objects, and that's how duplicate works. And also we have a very handy tool for duplicating objects, and I want to introduce that to you, especially when you want to have some floors, to create a sets of floors on the ground or create some sets of walls, and it's very hard for you to duplicate it one by one and moving it. We have an axis duplicate object. If you click on this triangle button in here, you can access to this tool, which I call it axis duplicates, and you should one more time click on that so that it enables on your selected objects. And when you select your axis, for example, I want to select the Z axis in here, and while holding the leftmost button and start dragging in that axis, you can have some duplicates in your model. And if you select, and you can also do it for several models at the same time. For example, I will hold Control to select objects, and one of the easy ways to select objects is to drag and select all the objects. And I want to, for example, duplicating them in the x-axis, so I will start to drag in the x-axis, and here I have created a set of floors on my ground, and that's how this very useful and handy tool works. And I always recommend you to use it to create sets of objects in specific directions. All right, now I have said the duplicate, and also I have talked about this button, which is for multi-select, and the other one is the focus. As I told you before, focus. When you want to focus an object, when you select an object and I want to focus an object, just click on this button to focus on that object. And also you can click on the F on the keyboard. And also I should mention a shortcut for the duplicate. Control D is the shortcut of duplicate. And if you want to know more, just click on this chain to know more about the shortcuts. And let me talk about the snap. Snap is another handy tools that we have. Sometimes we want to align something with some other things. For example, if I move this floor to match it with this part by hand, sometimes it may not be matched exactly. It may be upper, it may be down, or it may not be matched. In this time we use the snap tools and we enable the snap toggle. For example, I will enable the snap toggle and I want to select the vertex that I want to match with the other vertex. For example, I want to I want to align this vertex with this one, so I will move my mouse to this place. And if you look at that, when you move your mouse to a special vertex, the gizmo goes to that place. So I want to match this vertex with this one so that it aligns well with this ones. So I will move it in here, and sometimes it gives a bad effects. Don't worry about that. I will move it near, and sorry. Oh, I think something is wrong. Yes, it works. It worked. It's very easy, but sometimes give you unwanted effects, but it doesn't matter. And you can also, by clicking, making it enabled or disabled, because it's a toggle. And if you want to delete something, delete an object or sets of objects, you can select those objects and click on this delete. And also you can use the delete button in your keyboard. And also I should mention that shortcut of snap is the V. You can use the V instead of enabling or disabling this toggle. For example, I want to use it. If I can, I will go and hold the V and move it, and it gives me again a very bad effect. Sometimes it happens during the snaps, and yes. All right, and this is the delete. And also this is the full screen mode. If you clicked on that, you can go to the full screen mode so that you can see all your land and all your objects, all your buildings without anything to disturbs you. And you can again exit the full screen to access all the buttons and all the modus packs in here now. And these are all about the interface of the M-Builder. And using the M-Builder is very easy, and you can create several styles of buildings. You can create sci-fi buildings, you can create classic buildings, you can create fantasy buildings. And one thing I should mention, I should say you, if you back to the office starter and go to the structures, floors and walls, these are the walls. But it doesn't mean that you should always use these objects for the walls. Sometimes you want to have some special walls. For example, you want to have some hexagon walls, something like a bee house. In these cases, you can use other objects as the walls. For example, for creating a bee house effect, you can go to the decorative, and in the arts, we can have some hexagons, and I want to show you how to use them. For example, let's click on this hexagon, and let's click on this form of hexagon, which is the field form of that one, to create a hexagon inside that. And after creating something like this effect, select the inner hexagon and change its material to something like glass. For example, I want it to be the glass of my hexagon frame. And let's change the material of that to something, select it and go into the glass tab and select the glass, and here I have created the glass. And also I want to select the frame, and I want to make it black, and I will select the glass part and scale it down a little bit so that not to overlap with the other part, and scale it something like that. And I will select both of them, move them a little bit up, because not to interact with the ground, because when I start to scale in all directions, as I cannot scale more when I'm on the ground, and it doesn't go through the ground, it may give me a bad effect. So I will move it up a little bit and then start to scale. And it can be my glass frame that can be used as the wall. And also you can use solid materials instead of glass. And after you have created your wall, you can rotate it, and I want to use the snap rotation, so I will click on this triangle button in here and click on the snap. And after clicking on that, I want to again click on that, and I want to rotate it. And if you look at that, it interacts with the ground. And try not to interact with the ground while you are rotating. I will go it up and start to rotate. And that's how I have created an hexagon wall. And I can Control D to duplicate that and move it in the axis by clicking on the move, or also clicking on the W on the keyboard, and also Control D again and moving it, for example, down. I cannot go more down. I should move them upper so that I can do that. But this is how I have created a hexagon wall without to use the walls in the structures. So not to try not to limit yourself with these names. These names are used for defaults, and you can use other things instead of others. But first of all, you should ask yourself, it's a good way or not. For example, if it's a good way to use a wall with two materials instead of a floor or not. And if the answer is not, try not to use them. And if the answer is yes, use an object instead of the other one. I think it's enough for this lesson, and I hope this lesson be useful for you guys, and I hope to see your beautiful buildings in the Metaverse. And keep in mind, creating beautiful buildings has a good effect for your works and for being seen in the Metaverse. Have a good time, good luck.